You may recall that in the earlier video in this series we were attempting to help a landscape designer produce her first CAD version of a design, and we've been working developing a base plan for a low maintenance garden bed featuring some native species, and we've got now the low dry stone wall in place, and it's now time to dress our drawing up with some various symbology, but importantly we want to start dressing it up by specifying the position and species of plants that will go in this garden bed. When you are working with gCADPlus, you have an extensive range of symbols, plant symbols, but others. One important symbol that you'd put in any developing design such as this is a north point. And all the symbols are gathered in this drop-down menu here, the library. So if we go to details, we can scroll through a whole list. And if we are interested in a north point, click on north, and then just scroll down and find, let's choose this one, and we'll open it. And it tells me there's already one there because I've been rehearsing. Do you want to redefine it? We'll just say yes, and now insert it in this drawing. So in goes the north point. We're very interested in that as landscape designers because the shade will, from the taller trees, let's imagine that we put a feature tree in the central position here. That'll give us opportunity if, say, north is at roughly 45 degrees, we can spin the north indicator. You can get the true north on the site, of course, from any number of sources, including mobile phones. So north is in that direction towards the upper right. We're also going to use, or need rather, from the library and from the details, we're also going to need a scale bar. So we can pick scale bars. We have 5 meter, that'll be a relatively small scale, but let's take a 10 meter scale. We get a preview of it in this box here. And once again, I've been rehearsing, so I'll say yes, insert it into the drawing. And now we have in the developing design a symbol and a scale bar. Convert that back to a continuous line because it's going to confuse things. I don't want that to distract us from our work. What we particularly want to do now is to bring some symbols into the design. If I split the screen, remember we can swing from one drawing to another. That's what we're aiming for. But you can also, on that window option, in the window drop down here, we can tile them vertically. So on the left is our target design and we are working our way towards it. If I come across, and I can click from one to the other, and you'll do that when you're working with multiple designs, quite possibly cannibalizing an earlier design and bringing it into a new one. But let's just select this one. It tells us, ignore for the moment that it's Dixonia, but we need to find U plant symbol 13 if we want a similar symbol over here. We don't have to copy everything here because we're going to do our own design using the same species. So we want to find from our library, so let's give focus over here to the right. We can even move, give ourselves a bit more room. We can go to the library. This time we're going to go to plants and to the standard collection of plants. And this gives us a list of plants, and they all start with U, and that's to keep them separate from others. You're not likely to create one yourself with a U prefix. And there's U plant symbol 15. We want 13, and there it is. So we can open it and insert it into the drawing. this little box pops up. If I tick the scale, I could dynamically indicate the canopy diameter as the symbol goes in. Now we're working in the metric area, and all the standard symbols in this library group have a canopy diameter of 1,000 units, 1,000 millimeters, or a meter. So if I leave it blank, as I'm going to do here, when I say OK, the symbol comes in and we can put it in position, remembering that a taller tree here will cast shade, and also remembering that a symbol for a tree fern, so this symbol for the tree fern comes in at a diameter of a meter. If I click from one side to another, there we are, a meter. So we can scale it at this point by selecting it and right-clicking on the word scale, and click in the middle, come out to the outside there, and it's going to be a tree fern is going to be certainly more than a meter in canopy diameter. This white line around here is in fact on its own layer, and we'll deal with that later. We'll be able to turn that off and also turn off the little cross that marks the symbol. So we have one tree fern symbol in position, unlike the case over here. When we select a symbol, we get the botanical name and common name, and we're going to work through that in a minute to show you how that works in gCADPlus. But I'm going to copy this tree fern symbol, and I'm going to pop it in a group of 3, because if you look at them growing in the wild, they form copses, thickets, if you like, of trees. And you remember we did a scale, and let's sort of vary the size a little bit, and we'll also change the angle, and I can grab hold of that dot at the end of the base point of the symbol. So I'm giving some variation to the symbols that are going in, and our north is to the upper right, so they'll be in a shaded area from a taller species that we put in here. So we're working our way now, getting comfortable, hopefully, placing symbols. The circle here and that cross in the center are somewhat distracting. I mentioned before that they are on their own layer. They're on a layer called plant construction. Notice these are grayed out. There's nothing on those layers, but the ones with the blue outline to the icon do have something on them. So I'm going to click on that little light bulb, and it'll take our view out. We just see the symbol. I'm also a little bit distracted in that symbol by the white line running through there, and you can actually edit the symbol on the fly. Select it, go down to the bottom here and say edit it, and what we'll do is actually looks as though in the design here there's a darker line. We can modify and match properties, this option here, and if we pick match properties, sorry, we come across here, the prompt says select an entity to pick up the properties. So if we pick that darker line there, we can now set a crossing window there. Can you see that changes those? And we can then right click and pick close the block editor. So I'm much happier with that as a symbol. I just remind you that at the moment, when we select the symbol in the properties box, we don't know what species it's meant to be. We know because we're designing that's going to be, I mentioned the copse where we had 3, and then I've added another another instance of the tree fern. Now let's see if we can find a species that might grow relatively tall and cast some shade here, and we put it in that central zone. And if we come back over to the left, there's not a plant that is plant. This one is rather odd from my point of view. The designer has labelled this one Azalea Indicator. Sorry, let me rephrase it. It's a block, a symbol called Azalea Indica, but they've assigned it to the Victorian Waratah Teleopia. So that to me is slightly confusing, but if we come back over to our design, we need to go back into the library and plants, and this time we're going to go into the named series. Now, we'd be looking ideally for Teleopia, but I'm fairly sure that that doesn't exist, so they're in alphabetical order. See, we're scrolling through a whole lot of symbols here, and I guess our designer has scrolled down the list and found a suitable one. So the Victorian and scrolled down through the list and found Azalea Indica red, knowing that the Victorian Waratah is also red. They've chosen this one rather than draw their own and create their own. So having picked it up, now we can insert it into the drawing. This time I'm going to say specify it on the screen. So the symbol comes in, but the prompt says specify the insertion point, and can you see I can drag it out. So it's a relatively large tree, and we will imagine looking at the foliage that's going to cast reasonable shade. So we're starting to create our design rather nicely. It may even be a little larger. So this is a dynamic scaling, and if we measure across here, we've dynamically scaled it to about 4.5 meter canopy diameter. Now would be the time to jump on the internet, maybe look at Wikipedia and see the canopy diameter. You see the estimates of the size and canopy of that particular species. I happen to know it's a species native to the Gippsland area in Victoria and grows as an understory species. And I think it does have a relatively dense canopy. Well, I've moved to my browser, jumped into Wikipedia. It's a very, very useful tool, and it's known as the Gippsland mountain or Victorian Waratah, a large shrub or small tree in the family Proteaceae. So it does have some fairly thick leaves. It's definitely going to cast some shade. Here's an example of it there growing in a national park. So just as a designer, we refresh our memory of the particular plant. Hopefully we know already that it grows well in our design locality and we see it in other gardens. So we now know that there are at least 2 types of plant symbols in the library, and we've picked one of the standard ones, and if we go to named ones, Dichondra repens, you may be able to see down here, is in this design. So we go to named and scroll down to Dichondra, see if there's one there. Dichondra repens is here, and so we can pop that in as well. And it comes in at a very large size. Of course, I've left that dynamic indicator method. If I'd paid a little more attention and said library plants named, scroll down again, even though it's sitting in the drawing, pick Dichondra, open it up and insert into the drawing, I left that tick there. So you just need to be aware of it. So when it comes in like so. It's coming in 1 meter across, and we need to scale those and reduce the size. I'm doing that dynamically here, but if I came across to this one, notice that dynamically it's got a scale of 2, and I've got a scale of 6 here, so we can type a number here. You can vary that size in the X. I would suggest we don't do that. So this can now be copied and simply stamped. It's a dichondra as an understory plant. Goes very well in the shade, so we can tuck it in under this one and finish. So let's get rid of that. Those two are gone. So our design is taking shape. If we come back over here, we have the dichondra, the Dixonia, a Dianella revoluta would be the next one, and I'm not sure. I don't keep a list, and perhaps I should. If we see if we can find Dianella, library plants named it is one here, Dianella. Insert into the drawing. And there we are. That looks just a little bit big. It'll only grow half the meter. So we can type a value of 0.5 and now copy it. And again, our designer put them all the way along the edge there, but I think they can be scattered in different places in the design. So we have 4 in this list now, Dichondra repens, and they're all sitting nicely. However, if we come back to this design here, although one way to represent them as a legend is just to put a piece of text alongside the symbol, a far nicer way is to run a plant schedule where you plot botanical name and common name there, and gCADPlus will total them up for you. And that is a much more efficient way of working, because if you change the number, if you put new copies or copy more, then that schedule can be automatically updated. So I think it's time that we start associating a plant name, a correct botanical name, with a symbol. And I think that's a reasonable topic for the next in this series.